Waltrip, the new kid in town. The future looks bright for this youngster.
Waltrip from Franklin, Tennessee takes the lead.
No, and of course it's a very tight little racetrack. There's not a lot of room for anything to go wrong.
Darrell Waltrip.
Darrell Waltrip.
Darrell Waltrip.
Darrell Waltrip.
Darrell Waltrip wins. What a streak that team is on.
Oh, won the Daytona 500. Won the Daytona 500.
When I decided that I was going to retire in 2000, it was bittersweet. I didn't end up my career the way I wanted to.
And Waltrip brings the car in, you can hear the engine misfiring, and there's a lot of smoke. It's more than a plug wire, I'm afraid.
Darrell Waltrip gets hard into the wall. Waltrip sweated it out just to get into this race.
New fans that had started to follow in the sport in the 90s never got to see me when I was at my best. Matter of fact, they never even got to see me when I was just mediocre. They didn't know who Darrell Waltrip was. There were people that didn't know Darrell Waltrip won 7 races in a row at Bristol or 5 Coke 600s or any of those things. 75 was a darn good year for us. We were really, really competitive in my own car. It was number 17, orange and white, terminal transport. And we came here to Nashville, and it was a Mother's Day weekend. My grandmother, my grandfather, all my family came down here for the big races. A couple laps we took the lead, and that was my first Cup win. And it was so cool. The picture that I have, it's my whole family, my mom, my dad, and Michael standing down in the front corner of the car, my grandmother, my grandfather. And the interesting thing about my grandmother being there was she really was the reason why that I ever even thought about racing. There were 5 of us kids, and we didn't have a lot of money. My grandfather was a deputy sheriff in Owensboro, and he worked traffic on the weekends for the races. My grandmother would bring me to the races with her to keep her company. She didn't like sitting in the grandstand by herself. I'm a little guy, 6, 7 years old. Those cars fascinated me. Take that thing down there, throw it sideways. Wah, wah, wah. I told my grandmother, I said, you know, Granny, one day, I think that's what I want to do. One day I'm going to be a race car driver. Mom worked at the IGA, and my dad drove a Pepsi-Cola truck. He was a route salesman for Pepsi-Cola, so I'd help my dad in the summertime when school was out. There was a hardware store in Owensboro where I grew up. They sold go-karts. Every time for the next few weeks, we'd stop by there to deliver Pepsi-Colas, and there sat that go-kart. They had it on the showroom floor. I'd go over and I'd sit on that thing, and I had this vision. I had this vision of me winning the world's biggest go-kart race. Nobody in my family had ever raced before. It wasn't like I'd inherited something. The guy that owned the hardware store, he said, Leroy, that's my dad's name, he said, you got to get that boy a go-kart. I'll sell it to you on credit. When it came to the Waltrip family, that was us. We didn't care how much it cost, we just wanted to know how much a month is it. I had a big race at the fairgrounds in Louisville, and we took that go-kart to that race. You would have thought I'd ridden a go-kart my whole life. I hopped on that thing, and if everybody else was going around that track in 15 seconds, I was going around that track in 13 seconds. But my poor brothers and sisters sacrificed a lot so I could race my go-kart, so I could work on my racing career. I know all of them at the time maybe thought it was a little bit over the top for us to be doing what we were doing. And so when I look at that picture of my first win right down here in Victory Circle, and who's standing in there as proud as she could possibly be, was my grandmother. Because it wasn't too long after that she passed away, but I was always so grateful that she got to see me win my first race.
Darrell Waltrip, the new young tiger of NASCAR racing.
Darrell Waltrip certainly is the man to watch this year.
Receives the checkered flag and first place, Waltrip.
Darrell Waltrip clinches his second straight national driving title.
Darrell Waltrip has just walked all over this field tonight. I didn't have to work at driving. It was a natural thing for me to do. I had a talent and I didn't even know I had it. I was racing in Owensboro and winning every week. Little racetracks teach you car control, throttle control, finesse. You're not going 200 miles an hour, so you got time to absorb more, learn more. It got to be too easy. There was not any competition there for me anymore. So I needed a challenge. And my next challenge, I felt like, was here at the fairgrounds in Nashville. This racetrack had an incredible reputation.
They come from the city, the farm, and the mountains for the one day of the year when the NASCAR driving stars come to Nashville. This is live action on this July 25th, 1970.
If you could win a race at Nashville, you got national recognition. Ended up leaving Owensboro, moving down to Franklin, Tennessee to go to work for a man named P.B. Crowell, and he had won the track championship here, and he had the best cars, and he knew this racetrack, and he hired me to drive for him.
Dad always told me, and it's always the deal, always play with somebody better than you are because you can learn something from them, and that's where Darrell was when he come in.
Darrell couldn't have picked a racetrack any better than the fairgrounds there in Nashville. It was slick, hard to manage, and just having the fastest car was not going to win you a race.
The old racetrack that I started on was a lot like Darlington. It was narrow. It was kind of a one-groove racetrack. You'd go in and go right up to the top of the banking.
Had real high bank right dead in the middle of the corner. So you went in, you had to run at the wall and turn and come off the wall because you couldn't just go around and make a circle.
Some of the worst wrecks probably ever been caused here at the fairgrounds. I caused them. But I learned, and I learned fast. Mr. Donahoe, the promoter here, he wanted to change the track because he couldn't pass. It was hard to race on. So he wanted to change it around, make it a little more exciting. So he decided he was going to have the highest banked short track in America. He banked this thing up to 36 degrees.
And there you see the roller coaster at the state fairgrounds here. This racetrack is something like a roller coaster in its own right, with these 35-degree banked turns.
When the track was banked as sharply as it was, you look through that windshield in the corner, you can't see very far ahead of you. So you've got to sharpen your reflexes. That's what Nashville really teaches a race driver how to do.
Some of the top-notch drivers refused to either race there or never really adapted to the racetrack like Darrell did.
Once they built that track with the big banks, I mean, he just is like an old comfortable pair of shoes. He just put a hurting on everybody week after week.
I'd watched enough races that I knew exactly what to do. I mean, it just came to me. It was so fast and so high banked that we couldn't have a weekly show here. And that's what this joint really was known for back in the day, was weekly racing. So I think the banks now are 18, 20 degrees, something like that. And that's the track you see here now.
I firmly believe that Darrell's early experiences here at Nashville is, as much as anything, one of, if not the compelling reason why he was so successful on the NASCAR Cup circuit.
Experiencing those different configurations. Like I said, that first one, like Darlington. Went to Darlington, I was like, Darlington didn't scare me one bit.
Darrell Waltrip, one of the youngsters, one of the bright newcomers to automobile racing. He has to be patient. He has to discipline himself, and that is one of the tough things to do. You're in traffic again. Waltrip going down low. He's got him.
That took
took some real nerve to do that.
And Waltrip, the big man at Nashville Speedways every Saturday night, is out in front.
And then I went to Bristol, and I said, man, this racetrack here at Bristol just like running a home in Nashville.
I'd sit there at a place like Bristol and watch the stopwatches in total amazement, how he could click off a lap after lap after lap and only vary a couple of tenths each lap.
Far and away, his #1 all-time greatest accomplishment was winning 7 in a row at Bristol.
Darrell Waltrip will win his 5th in a row.
6 races in a row.
7th time in a row.
It screamed volumes on the talent level of Darrell. Could he have done it without his background here in Nashville? I'm going to say probably not.
All the guys that came up in the Carolinas, you know, they had Hickory and they had Martinsville and they had Asheville and all those places. But there was nothing banked like Nashville.
This is a great training ground, and I learned so much here. The legend of this place and being a part of that legend, it's really important to me. It's been important in my career, and it's been important to the success I've had.
It was and still is the type track that just produces fabulous racing and produces fabulous race car drivers.
Often humorous, sometimes a bit outspoken, but rarely silent, and his articulate wit and quick sense of humor prompted his fellow competitors to nickname him Jaws.
I owned this joint. I owned this Fairgrounds racetrack. I owned every racetrack I went to until I went to Cup. And then I was just a small fish in a big pond. And the best thing I had going for me was my ability to talk and antagonize.
The drivers, they were very intimidated by television. They didn't like to face the camera.
Leroy, what happened out there?
Okay, I was following Benny, and David Pearson was behind me, and
man, I came along. I mean, I lit the joint up. You got any comment? Ain't you got anything to say?
You don't have to get bossy.
Yankees are all alike.
You don't have to get bossy.
Never know what to say. Back to the tower.
Darrell, he just gets it. He understands the game.
A driver has to be good and lucky to win at Talladega. Darrell Waltrip, do you feel lucky today?
No, but I feel good.
When they needed stories, they always came to Darrell. And the reason was he always had something to say to them that was unique.
My mother was probably changing my diapers about the first time this race was run.
Don't see relief drivers very much anymore.
Well, it's hard on our pride.
Where can you rest on this racetrack?
In the pits. And if you got a good pit crew, it doesn't last very long.
Darrell was so good at psyching people out.
You know, when it's your turn to win or your track, I guess you're just going to win no matter what.
A lot of times we're not the fastest, but when the green flag comes out, we go to the front.
Joe, how does it feel to be the biggest cheater here today?
I always admired his confidence. And I think that carried him a long way in the sport. And the fact that he didn't mind speaking about it, I thought that was good too.
Well, here's Darrell Waltrip in the pits. Then Jarrett making his way over the wall, going to try to find out what happened.
Almost lost the damn thing.
Racing here taught me about racing and how to race on difficult racetracks, but those guys taught me all about how to do TV and how to deal with the media and how to do interviews, and that turned out to be invaluable to me.
He was what I would call the first showman of the sport. And as a track owner, you're thankful for that because he puts the sport on the front page. And as a result, he sold tickets.
I always felt I needed to take the road less traveled because it's not so crowded. When I came in the sport, big belt buckles, cowboy boots, cowboy hats, not me. So I always tried to be different.
He embraced the media. He didn't run from it. I think he understood that this was a platform for him to be able to separate himself from basically the standard NASCAR driver.
Because of that, I had a bad reputation. Race fans at that time didn't like somebody different. All of a sudden, this smooth-talking, slick-dressed guy from Tennessee shows up and starts beating their heroes. You know, every week you wanted to have a rivalry. It sold tickets. It got headlines. It made news.
When he come in, he looked at it completely different, I think, than
the good old boy deal, even though he's from Kentucky, Tennessee, whatever. He tried to put his mark on it, and he did.
Darrell Waltrip in the Mercury, number 95, has taken over the lead. He's a hard charger and considered to be one of the most promising rookies on the NASCAR scene.
I had to beat Richard Petty. If I was sitting here and you were sitting beside me and say, see that 43 car? He's the king of this sport. He's mine.
Coming to turn 3, 2 more turns to go. Richard Petty, Darrell Waltrip. Oh! Petty has got the lead. There comes Waltrip. They're coming to the finish line.
And it really was showing Petty and was showing the world that this new superstar was here to stay.
Now here is Cale Yarborough trying to move back into second place, racing with Darrell Waltrip.
You see that 11 car? That's Cale Yarborough, 3-time consecutive champion. He's on my list. He's going down.
I think it was in Darlington. He crashed me one day and during the race.
Big action.
Both leaders are out of it. Cale Yarborough is still spinning down the track. So the mean old lady at Darlington jumps up and snaps both leaders, Darrell Waltrip and Cale Yarborough.
One of us would have won that race if we hadn't wrecked. And when they interviewed Cale, they said, what happened?
Some of the news reporter asked me what happened. I just said, Jaws got me.
It's always running that mouth and tearing up cars. Looked like Jaws to me. You know, everybody laughed, thought it was funny, and nobody thought about it sticking.
I just couldn't resist it. I called this friend of mine up down at the beach who was a shark fisherman, and I said, go catch me the biggest shark you can and bring it up to Charlotte.
Humpy Wheeler, great promoter that he is, thinking maybe a little different than everybody else, he decides he's going to elevate the legend of Jaws. They bring that shark back up to Charlotte, take the shark, hook it on the back of a wrecker.
That was pretty wild. I mean, the shark hanging upside down.
I'm not sure that Darrell was very receptive to that, but Humpy Wheeler didn't care.
And of course, Cale was raising Holly Farms chicken at the time. The coup was, I had a dead chicken that had not been plucked, and I stuck the chicken down in that shark's mouth.
The legend of Jaws. She was alive and well after that.
Darrell Waltrip, the new kid in town. With his first Grand National win coming only 2 weeks ago, the future looks bright for this 28-year-old youngster.
You know, back in the day, pretty much if you wanted to get into cup racing or really any kind of race, you had to do it on your own. You had to do it out of your own pocket. We start the 75 season and we got nice cars. I was spending money I didn't have, but people trusted me. First of all, they saw my passion. They saw my vision, and I could back it up.
Here comes Darrell Waltrip. It's going to be a wild finish. Bobby Allison knows how to use a lot of racetrack here and takes the checker.
I tell you, Darrell's not to be denied. He really drove a good, hard race.
Dygaard was around at the time. Donnie Allison was driving for him.
My brother-in-law, the Di of Dygaard, Mike the Prospero was his name. He was from Connecticut and hadn't made a lot of money before he was 30, and I had made a lot of money before I was 30. And he approached me in this game of pinochle about the fact that he had bought a car, Bobby Allison was having it built to run it at Daytona. And he said, would you like to go half with me? And I said, I don't know anything about racing. You know, that's not my world. And he said, come on, it'll be fun. Donnie Allison was driving the car. And the 4th of July race of 1975 didn't go so well.
We go to Daytona, it's 4th of July race, and car's running good. I passed Donnie on the last lap of the race.
Darrell Waltrip, the youngster who won earlier this year at Nashville, Tennessee. He takes the number 4 spot, and Donnie Allison will finish in the number 5 position.
And of course, I'm from a world of not losing. I'm used to making business deals and winning.
Bill Gardner, high-strung, big businessman, and he's not used to losing and getting beat every week by that 17 car and that kid from Tennessee that doesn't have 2 nickels to rub together, and he keeps beating us every week.
I'd made a decision that if I didn't feel we were that competitive and going to win, that we needed to make a change. And so after that 1975 4th of July race, I terminated our relationship with Donnie Allison.
Bill French said, have you seen Bill Gardner? They want to hire you to drive their car. I said, well, that's ridiculous. I got my own team. I got my own cars. I'm better than they are. So I get back in the car, and Steve and I are driving up the road, and I said, honey, you're not going to believe what just happened. That Dyguard bunch wants to hire me to drive their car. Of course, Stevie knows the financial shape we were in, how much money we were spending, how much money we owed.
We really didn't have anything going for us other than just his desire.
So in the middle of 75, we parked all my stuff. I called Jake and all the guys together and told them what I was going to do. And I said, but here's the deal. I'm going to make them hire all of y'all. And that's when things really improved.
Walking away is Waltrip. At the line, Darrell Waltrip wins by 12 car lengths. The crowd up on their feet as the checkered flag falls for car number 88. Coming to the finish line, it is Darrell Waltrip winning the Rebel 500.
Seeing the hometown guy do that good that early, then you had to think there were better things down the road.
Darrell was driving the wheels off the car. Won 26 races. It was a testament to his capabilities and what he wanted to show the world. It was kind of like a coming out party.
We won several races in 77, 78, same thing, and then 79, we made a strong run at the championship.
Darrell Waltrip certainly is the man to watch this year.
Waltrip wins it by just about a half a car length.
I didn't get beat by the competition, I beat myself.
Look, we've got a situation that Darrell Waltrip, he's all over the racetrack.
Darrell Waltrip, who had built up almost a mile-and-a-half lead on his nearest competitor.
I've always regretted losing that championship. And so that was one of those life lessons I learned, and I take it with me everywhere I go to this day. Don't beat yourself.
We lost by 11 points to Richard Petty. And it's almost like in any sport, you know, teams that have won championships consistently, like a Richard Petty or the Witt brothers or a Junior Johnson, they can let it all hang out more. I think we took more of a conservative approach.
Cale had won 3 consecutive championships. He comes to me in 1980 and he says, I'm going to give you some of the best advice anybody ever give you. Junior doesn't even know it yet, but I want to run a partial schedule. I'm tired of racing every week. And I know that Junior would really like to have you in his car.
Darrell was a good guy. He liked to talk, but he was good. He was a good guy. And he was a heck of a race car driver. And I felt like if I was going to leave one of the best positions in the country in racing, that I should let somebody know about it.
So naturally, Junior would look around, just like I would if I had been in his position at that time, and say, well, who is the best driver now in the sport? And obviously it was Darrell Waltrip.
When I lost Cale, you know, I knew that he was the next up-and-comer.
When we got word that Junior might be interested in having Darrell be his driver, that was huge to us.
I mean, the man's a legend, and he had the best car in the sport at the time and won championships and races, and he'd won 50 races himself. I was flabbergasted, but I had a problem. I had this darn contract.
I intend to enforce the contract to the letter of the law, and I hope that Darrell will be driving for us in 1981 and 82.
No one did contracts at that time. They weren't from the business world that I was from.
So much language in there that there was no way that we were just going to be able to say, I'm walking.
I knew that major sponsorships required moral turpitude clauses and things that most of these drivers had never even heard of. There were no written contracts. So all this was new. My position was if he wanted to get out of the contract, that we needed to have compensation.
So we ended up negotiating a deal, and Junior ended up putting up $100 grand. Mountain Dew put up $100 grand, and I borrowed $100 grand from my father-in-law. It was an investment in my future. Probably could have stayed at Dyguard and toughed it out, but I wanted to drive for the legend. I wanted to drive for a man that I knew would take me from just being a race car driver to a champion. And because I'd seen what he did with Cale, and I wanted that too.
To be with Junior Johnson, it's like a rebirth for me, and I'm just looking forward to 1981. I think it's going to be the best year I ever had.
This is an opportunity of a lifetime. This could be my defining moment in the sport, and I knew that. Just one little small hiccup. The team did not want me to be their driver.
Honestly, it was more like, oh, dear God, please, not Darrell Waltrip, because Darrell was one of our biggest rivals.
Well, Darrell wasn't no question he's going to be a great race driver, but everybody that I had on the team didn't like Darrell because sometimes he'd beat us.
It's a big learning process between when you're trying to get acclimated to a new guy, and now we're going into a model change year. All those cars came from 116 inches to 110 inches. The tread widths came from 66.5 inches down to 62 inches. And we were trying to refine and define that.
Those cars were evil, hard to drive. A lot like what we went through, you know, in the last few years with the COT car. Well, that was a big change in the 80s, just like that was a big change in 2000.
And Waltrip spins as he comes off the turn forward.
Junior finally came to us, and he had a little meeting of the minds. He was about ready to have all he could stand with the crew, all he could stand with Darrell complaining about the crew.
Brewer and I are about ready to kill each other. Finally, Junior grabs us both by the collar and says, y'all come with me. And boy, when Junior gets mad, you got trouble. He pulled us up in the front of that old hauler, and he said, let me tell you two knuckleheads something. I'm sick and tired of your belly aching. Either you get out there, you get your heads together, you work on that car, and you get along, or guess what? You and you are both going to be looking for a job.
We got along fine after, you know, a race or two. Darrell knew what he had to do, and he knew he had the best car on the racetrack, and he took it and proved it.
Darrell Waltrip receives the checkered flag and first place. It's been the lucky weeks. Last week winning in Richmond and right here at Rockingham. Darrell Waltrip wins again, makes it 2 in a row.
Car number 11, driven by Darrell Waltrip, has dominated NASCAR Grand National Racing, winning almost every race it enters.
By the end of the season, we went to North Wilkesboro, Martinsville, Charlotte, and Rockingham in the fall. We sat on 4 poles and won 4 races in a row.
We came off with a brashness that I think really helped us take it to our competition and eventually, you know, helped lead us to a championship in '81.
We ended up winning 12 races, the championship. Nobody could touch us.
But it looked like kind of an easier day for you.
That's the problem with me. I make it look too easy.
It was a perfect year. First team to be honored in New York at the Waldorf. We're just happy as we can possibly be. Me and Brewer and Harold and all of us were celebrating, and Brewer said, had a good year. Been good, but we're leaving. What? Yep, we're going to go to work for MC Anderson. Well, I was crushed. We just bonded. We just kind of all got together, and they were going to leave.
Their fortune became my fortune, because when everybody had left and the smoke had cleared, you know, I saw an opportunity. So I walked in the office and I told Junior, I really would like to have a shot at being your crew chief. And he looked at me and he said, okay.
And everybody said, oh, it's a sinking ship. They'll never win another championship. Look at the people they got.
Darrell and I's relationship had been real rocky up to that point. But fortunately for me, I think he saw the sincerity and my commitment to him.
82 was a great year. 12 more wins, another championship.
I just need to thank Junior and Jeff Hammond and all the boys that work so hard on this race car. I tell you right now, we got a super crew for 82.
You know, 81 and 82, you couldn't have scripted better years for so many reasons. That $300,000 investment I made paid off.
He proved our side of it, and he decided he was the best driver at that given time, and he might very well could have been the best driver that's ever drove a race car.
Darrell Waltrip, a hand in the air, a wave to the crowd of 100,000 plus. He wins $200,000. He blows up. What a Hollywood ending.
The motor blew right when I took the checker. It blew all to pieces.
The guy just flat had the talent. He could wrestle it out of a car.
It's all over for the 1985 Winston Cup season. Darrell Waltrip wins the championship.
85, we win the championship, but it wasn't pretty. Junior decided that maybe I don't have the same desire I had, that the fire had gone out.
Junior was just Junior. He wanted everything his way. I don't knock him for that. I mean, that's business. But I think that brought the downfall because Darrell's competitiveness never faltered.
During the '86 season, by now Rick Hendrick, this guy, this car dealer, all of a sudden he's getting his legs under him. And because he was a Chevrolet dealer, things started flowing over toward the Hendrick side and less toward the Junior side. But you tell Junior Johnson that, and he'd want to hit you with one of them left hooks. And so we were kind of coming apart at the seams.
Things like that happen. You don't get mad. You just move on and do the best you can.
So I call Rick up, and I say, Rick, let's do it. End up making the deal to drive the Tide car in 1987 because it had the makings of something really, really great.
About the only thing Darrell Waltrip has not won in his stellar Winston Cup career is the Daytona 500. But when he became the third driver in the Rick Hendrick stable, the odds became better than ever that he would break a long-standing drought.
You know, he'd won championships, he'd won a lot of races. But to really cap his career off, Darrell really wanted to win the Daytona 500.
In '89, we had this new engine package. We go to Daytona, and this thing was bad to the bone. I mean, it ran like it didn't even have a restrictor plate on it. Hammond and I all were so excited, we're nervous. Are we cheating on something? Is the engine illegal? What's going on? And a guy named Art Krebs checks the carburetor on all the engines. He takes my carburetor off, and he immediately says, you can't run that. So what do you mean we can't run that? That's not legal. So they took my carburetor. Well, that carburetor was worth about 15 horsepower. The carburetor we put on the engine, not so much power, but really good gas mileage.
And we are set to go racing 200 laps in the Daytona 500.
Door to door, nobody pulling out to pass. They just stay in line side by side as they head for turn one.
Boy, Waltrip is in trouble.
He's just falling way back.
The car was going slower and slower. Darrell was starting to get agitated and frustrated because he could feel this wind, getting away from him.
Okay, Darrell, let's go back through. When you get in position, tell me what you want to try and do to the car right quick. I think we ought to take 2 out of the right rear and put 2 in the left rear if you don't want to move in the front. Okay, I understand that, but if you think you need it in the front, now's the time to do it.
As the day went on, we kept coming in. We'd come in just on the car, come in just on the car. 500 miles is a long time at Daytona.
My job as a crew chief was to get him as happy as you possibly could at the end of the day. And we start thinking about this thing and all of a sudden realize, we pack that thing full of fuel in that last stop. We might be able to go distance.
When they gave 1 to go with 55 laps to go, we came down pit road. We topped up with fuel. Everybody else stayed out.
Are they going to be able to go that 55 laps on a tank of fuel?
Stevie had sat there and she had worked with the guys on the fuel mileage and she did all the calculating and she told Hammond we could make it.
And I said, you guys, we know how to lose this race. Let's win it. Let's take a chance here. What have we got to lose?
What has he got to lose?
That's right.
The only thing they remember is first place.
We're talking about 3 laps further than we've been all day. And he says, we're going to go for it. Draft. Sure enough, everybody starts stopping for fuel, and the first thing you know, it's just me and Alan Kowicki. It's obvious he's going to try to make it too, and I'm good, but I don't have the car to pass him with.
Well, here come those 2 cars, Kowicki and Waltrip. They are not making any effort to slow whatsoever. They're going to stay on the racetrack.
Lo and behold, he takes off up the hill.
Now Kowicki is out of the throttle. He drifts high in the banking. Darrell Waltrip takes the lead.
Waltrip in front. I think he's going to take the gamble. He is drafting all around the track off anyone he can find, trying to conserve fuel.
Then we had the fuel pressure gauge, and that thing is jumping all over the place, and it's, it's 4, 7 pounds, it's no pounds, it's all over the place, and the motor's... I'm screaming on the radio, I'm not going to make it! I'm not going to make it! I'm out of fuel! I'm out of fuel!
I was a cheerleader, and if you give him that little bit of encouragement, when he started faltering a little bit, he'd bring it right back on line.
I know it's tough, but you got to hang on.
1 lap to go. Will that fuel last?
One more lap, Go in the first turn. Blah, 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 blah. Here we go again.
Waltrip under power still in turn number 3. I think he's going to make it.
Coming in the third turn, I'm crying. I'm crying like a rat eating an onion. She's kind of chugging along. And sure enough, coasted across the start-finish line, won that stupid race, and I've been trying to win for 17 straight years.
The Daytona 500 belongs to Franklin, Tennessee's Darrell Waltrip.
Oh, I won the Daytona 500. I won the Daytona 500.
Darrell, how long?
Wait. This is the Daytona 500, isn't it? Don't tell me it isn't. Thank God.
It just shows that as much as a perfectionist has always tried to be, that whole week was anything from perfect, but it ended up with the perfect result. Boy, what an incredible list of people. Boy, I've done a pretty amazing job of hiring some very talented people. As good as '89 was. I mean, that was a great year. I won most popular driver. I won Daytona. I won 7 races. I won all my favorite races: Martinsville, Bristol, Atlanta, Charlotte, Daytona. And Hammond and I sat down one morning and I said, look, we can spend a sponsor's money just as good as these guys can.
I think we could have won a championship with Darrell if he'd stayed, but he had this desire to do his own team. You know, when a guy gets that in his head, then you've got to let him go do it.
I remember I never felt so helpless that when he finally separated from Rick Hendrick and I looked in that race shop and I saw my toolbox, that was it. And we were going to build a race team around that.
First year, me and Hammond, and we had a great group of guys. We were doing our own cars and getting the motors from Hendrick Motorsports. Everything started off beautifully.
And Darrell Waltrip will win his first race in September of 1989.
At the end of '91, I said, I can't believe I waited this long to do this. Got our legs under us in '92. We come out strong.
Here's Waltrip off of corner number 4, and the checkered flag waves.
Throw my heart out for you. Wait, I'm close. For you.
At the end of '92, I looked at what we were doing, and I said, for us to get to where I want to go, first of all, we got to do our own engine program.
We had the equipment and the availability to build engines in-house, and it's just something that Darrell wanted to try.
That was the beginning of the end. That was my demise.
Darrell Waltrip in the pit area. Got the hood up on his car.
Problems with Darrell's power plant.
Going under the hood. Look at the smoke coming out now.
Oh, now you see it.
Yeah, you guys got it. He blew it up.
It broke me. It was costing me $600,000 a month to keep this place open. Well, the first month, that's $600,000. I'm okay. Next month, that's $1.2 million. I'm okay. The next month, another $600,000, that's $1.8 million. Whoop, time out.
I don't know that he ever doubted his ability as a driver, but as a car owner, yes.
I need to prove to some of you guys in here, a lot of you guys, probably all of you guys, as a matter of fact, that I can still get the job done. I'd just like to get myself in a position where I can be a race car driver.
If Darrell's not believed in, he doesn't perform well, and that kind of was going on.
My performance is down. People were making fun of me for taking champions provisionals. I didn't have the money. You know, I was in pretty bad shape.
Whatever the team needed, he wanted to give it to them. And he wants to be competitive. And so to sell his team like he had to was devastating for him. It was the hardest thing he ever had to do.
I needed to get out from under the headaches of owning a race team. Finalized that deal this past week with this gentleman sitting to my left here, Tim Beverly. He's a businessman. He thinks he can run the team better than I can, and I agree with him.
In the meantime, Earnhardt has started DEI, and he's got Pennzoil as a sponsor, and he was in a panic because Pennzoil was putting pressure on him. They weren't getting the results.
Steve Park.
Steve Park got hurt in Atlanta and broke his leg and couldn't drive.
You know, with Steve laid up and we're working on getting Steve well again, it gave us an opportunity to put a truly great driver in there and bring a lot of confidence to the team.
First of all, I was very honored and pleased that Dale would call me and ask me to do that at a time when he needed help and I needed help, and it did so much for me.
Darrell Waltrip running in 7th position, and he's feeling racy, isn't he? Well, here goes Darrell Waltrip. This has kind of been a new leash on life for him.
It really pepped him up, and he got back to the old Darrell that we had known before.
All he's got to do is focus on driving. And look how well Darrell Waltrip is running. Look at him go.
Darrell, a lot of people left you for dead. You've shown that you still have the fire.
They didn't put quite enough dirt on me. Kicked it off and crawled back out. I've been in holes before and crawling out of a pretty deep one right now, but damn, this is good.
If I could have stayed in that one car the rest of the year, I'm pretty sure I'd have won a couple of races for Dale. But that last couple of years I drove for Travis Carter and the Kmart team. You know, another couple of years of floundering around, not being very competitive. So I decided it was time for me to quit, and it was so sad.
Hard to believe, man, that I ain't gonna do this no more. This is hard to believe. I have loved this, and I've done so much. Fought it so hard and so long. Hard to walk away from.
It was bittersweet, disappointing, but it was the right time to quit, and the right opportunity came along for me to get out of the car and then transitioning into the TV booth, where I'm just was a natural.
I know all too well it's a 400-lap race, but folks, what I'm worried about are those first 10. This racetrack's been laying here in the sun all afternoon, beating down on it. That turn up there, turn 3 and 4, it's like hitting glass.
I got to tell you, Larry, I think you'd agree, if that 48 car is that good this early, look out, because we know what he can do when the sun goes down.
Darrell is special. And somebody says, well, don't you get tired of playing second fiddle to Waltrip? No. That's been my role since 81. I love being his wingman, his co-pilot.
The accolades I've got for my work in television and the success I've had there far offsets any of those bad last 2 or 3 years I had in driving. So I'm proud of what I've done. I'm proud of my accomplishments, and I love my job. Can't imagine it could have worked out any other way. You know, we're sitting right here at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, where it all started, and my first win in 1975. It started on a journey that I knew I wanted to go, and I knew what I wanted to happen, but I didn't know if it ever would or not. And so the sport has been good to me. It's been my platform my whole life. It's what I stand on. It's who I am. I've helped grow the sport. At times when you know, like in the 80s, when it needed a spokesperson, I was there. I hope people look at me and say that me being in this sport has made the sport better, because me being in this sport has made me better. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. And one of the things I always dreamed of was being called a Hall of Famer, and now I am.